Get up! Animals don't eat where people sit.
Sheriff Earl Braddock said that to two black men in a packed diner. Isaiah Davis didn't flinch.
We paid for this meal. We're not going anywhere.
Braddock grabbed Isaiah's collar and yanked him out of the booth.
You don't get it, do you, boy?
Terrence jumped up. Get your hands off him! Braddock slammed Terrence face first into the table. Plates shattered. Then he cuffed him. Then he cuffed Isaiah. Both men face down on the cold tile floor.
Where are we headed now? Welcome to my town. And in my town, I decide who's human.
12 people watched. Not one opened their mouth. But this story doesn't end the way Braddock planned. Not even close. Let me take you back. 12 hours before that diner. Before the handcuffs. Before the blood on the tile floor. Hadley County, Georgia. Population 11,000. One main street. One courthouse. 3 churches. And one man who thought he owned it all. The kind of town where everybody knows your name, your business, and what you had for dinner last Tuesday. The kind of place where Friday night football is a religion, and the sheriff's word is gospel. Hadley wasn't on any map that mattered. No tourist traps, no chain restaurants. Just a stretch of Georgia back road lined with oak trees and silence. And right in the center of town sat Gloria's Griddle. 35 years that diner had been standing. Red vinyl booths cracked from decades of use. Checkered floors scuffed by 1,000 pairs of boots. The smell of bacon grease soaked into the walls so deep you could taste it before you walked through the door. Gloria Stevens built that place with her bare hands. 62 years old. Silver hair pinned back tight. Apron stained with the day's first batch of gravy. She knew every regular by name and every order by heart. 2 eggs over easy for the firemen, black coffee for the farmers, extra syrup for old Mr. Dawson in booth 4. Gloria's Griddle wasn't just a restaurant, it was the living room of Hadley County. Now let me tell you about the man who walked in that Friday night. Isaiah Davis, 42 years old, 6'1", built like a man who still ran 5 miles before dawn. He had the kind of face that was hard to read. Calm eyes, jaw set. The type of man who listened more than he talked. And when he did talk, people leaned in. 15 years with the FBI, supervisory special agent, counterterrorism division. He'd sat across the table from men who'd bombed buildings and never blinked. He'd led raids at 3 in the morning in cities most people couldn't point to on a map. But Isaiah was tired of chasing ghosts in other people's towns. He wanted to build something, fix something. So when Mayor Carolyn Whitfield called him personally and offered him the job of police chief in Hadley County, a department drowning in complaints and zero accountability, he said yes. He drove down from Virginia with his best friend Terrence Coleman riding shotgun. Terrence was a high school principal from Atlanta. Loud where Isaiah was quiet. Funny where Isaiah was serious. They'd been roommates at Howard University 20 years ago, and Terrence never missed a chance to remind Isaiah that he still owed him $40 from a bet they made sophomore year. They checked into the only motel in Hadley around 9 that Friday night. 2 rooms, clean sheets, thin walls. The parking lot smelled like pine needles and diesel fuel. Isaiah sat on the edge of his bed with a small leather notebook open on his knee. He'd been making notes for weeks. Body cam compliance. Mandatory, no exceptions. Use of force protocols. Complete overhaul. Community policing initiative. Starting month 1. Independent oversight board. Non-negotiable. He wasn't coming to Hadley to make friends. He was coming to clean house. Terrence knocked on the connecting door. Man, put the notebook away. We're not at work yet. Let's go get some food. Isaiah smiled. There's a diner in town. Gloria's something. We'll hit it in the morning. Pancakes? Terrence asked. Pancakes. Now here's what you need to understand about the man Isaiah was about to meet. Sheriff Earl Braddock had run Hadley County for 18 years. 58 years old, thick neck, thicker accent. The kind of man who wore his badge the way some men wear a crown, not as a responsibility, but as a birthright. 3 excessive force complaints had been filed against Braddock over the years. All 3 were reviewed internally. All 3 were dismissed by Braddock himself. He had 2 loyal deputies. Kyle Hutton, late 20s, built like a linebacker, brain like a yes man. His body cam had a funny habit of malfunctioning at the worst possible moments. And Sam Atkins, early 30s, quieter, the kind of deputy who followed orders but couldn't always look you in the eye afterward. Mayor Whitfield ran her election campaign on one word: reform. And the first name on her reform list was Earl Braddock's department. That's why she hired Isaiah. That's why the press conference was scheduled for Monday morning. Nobody told Braddock a new chief was coming. Not yet. Not until Monday. But Saturday morning came first, and so did the pancakes. Saturday morning broke soft over Hadley County. The sky was a pale wash of gold and blue. Dew clung to the windshields in the motel parking lot. Somewhere down the road, a church bell rang 7 times. Isaiah was already dressed. Jeans, navy polo, clean white sneakers. He looked like any other man heading out for weekend breakfast. No badge, no uniform, no reason for anyone to look twice. Terrence stepped out of his room, yawning. Tell me this diner has real coffee, not that gas station stuff. Guess we'll find out. They took Isaiah's rental SUV, a black Chevy Tahoe, nothing flashy, Virginia plates. Isaiah drove. Terrence fiddled with the radio. A gospel station crackled through the speakers as they rolled down Main Street. Gloria's griddle was already humming when they pulled into the gravel lot. 8 cars outside, a couple of pickup trucks, a mud-spattered tractor parked on the grass next to the building. The bell above the door chimed when they walked in. Every booth was taken except 2. Isaiah picked the one by the window. Terrence slid in across from him. The vinyl seat let out a tired squeak. Hannah Moore, 22, ponytail, community college textbook sticking out of her apron pocket, came over with 2 menus and a pot of coffee. She smiled the way small-town waitresses do, warm, automatic, no hesitation. "Morning, fellas. Coffee?" "Please," Isaiah said. She poured. Steam curled up from the mugs. The coffee smelled like it had been sitting on the burner since 5 a.m., dark and bitter and strong enough to strip paint. Isaiah didn't mind. Terrence ordered the short stack with bacon. Isaiah ordered the same plus a side of eggs. They settled in. Terrence started telling a story about one of his students who'd tried to submit a book report written entirely by artificial intelligence. Isaiah laughed. For the first time in weeks, his shoulders dropped. He wasn't thinking about policy reform or body cam protocols. He was just a man eating breakfast with his best friend. That lasted about 12 minutes. The crunch of gravel outside made Gloria look up from the register. A white cruiser with gold lettering pulled into the lot. The engine idled for a moment. Then it cut off. Gloria's hand paused on the cash drawer, her lips pressed together. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The 2 firemen at the counter exchanged a glance. Old Mr. Dawson in booth 4 suddenly became very interested in his newspaper. The door swung open. Sheriff Earl Braddock walked in like he was stepping onto a stage. Boots heavy on the tile, belt loaded, gun, cuffs, radio, baton. Every piece of metal catching the morning light. Behind him, Deputy Kyle Hutton filled the doorframe. Shoulders wide, sunglasses pushed up on his forehead, hand resting on his holster like he was posing for a recruitment poster. Braddock didn't go to the counter, didn't wave at Gloria, didn't nod at the regulars. His eyes locked onto the only 2 faces he didn't recognize. He walked straight to Isaiah and Terrence's booth, stood at the edge of the table, close enough that his belt buckle was level with Isaiah's coffee mug. He didn't sit, didn't lean, just towered. "Mornin'." His voice was slow and sticky like syrup poured over gravel. Isaiah looked up. Morning. Silence. Braddock let it hang there, let the weight of it press down on the booth. Then he spoke again. Don't think I've seen you boys around here before. Just visiting, Isaiah said. Even, measured, the way you talk to a man who's looking for a reason. Visiting. Braddock repeated the word like he was tasting it. Visiting who? No one in particular, just passing through. Braddock tilted his head. Passing through. In a rental truck with Virginia plates, on a Saturday morning, in my county. He let each phrase land like a stone dropped into still water. Terrence set his fork down. Is there a problem, officer? Braddock's eyes slid to Terrence, slow, deliberate, like a dog deciding whether something was worth chasing. Did I ask you a question? No, but then close your mouth. The diner went still. The clatter of dishes stopped. The gospel music from the kitchen radio sounded suddenly too loud. Braddock turned back to Isaiah. I'm going to need to see some ID, both of you. Isaiah knew his rights. He knew that in the state of Georgia, you're not required to show identification unless you're being detained or operating a vehicle. He also knew that saying so to a man like Braddock was like pouring gasoline on a campfire. He reached for his wallet anyway. Not because he had to, because he wanted to see how far this would go. He handed over his Virginia driver's license. Terrence did the same. Georgia license, Atlanta address. Braddock held both cards up to the light like he was inspecting counterfeit bills. He turned Isaiah's over, squinted at the photo, looked at Isaiah, back at the photo. Isaiah Davis, he read aloud. Virginia. He said the state like it was a disease. Long way from home, Mr. Davis. Like I said, visiting. Braddock pocketed both licenses, just slid them into his shirt pocket like they belonged to him now. Here's what's going to happen, Braddock said. He wasn't asking. I got a report this morning. Vehicle matching your description. Black SUV, out-of-state plates. Seen near the county line around 2 a.m. Suspicious activity. Isaiah's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted. He recognized the game. He'd seen it played 100 times during his years at the Bureau. Fabricated probable cause. Textbook pretextual stop. We checked into the Pine View Motel at 9 last night, Isaiah said. We haven't left since. Braddock smiled. Not with warmth, with ownership. Well, that's your version. I've got mine. And in this county, mine's the one that matters. He turned to Hutton. Run their plates. Hutton was already moving. He walked out the front door toward the Tahoe in the parking lot. Isaiah stayed still, his hands flat on the table, his breathing steady. He could feel every pair of eyes in that diner drilling into the back of his head. He could hear Gloria's shallow breathing behind the counter. He could smell the bacon burning on the griddle because nobody was watching it anymore. Sheriff, Isaiah said quietly, we're cooperating, but I want to be clear. We haven't committed any crime, and we do not consent to a search of our vehicle. The words landed in the room like a grenade with the pin pulled. Braddock's jaw tightened, his nostrils flared. He took one step closer to the booth. Close enough now that Isaiah could see the tiny veins in the whites of his eyes. Close enough to smell the chewing tobacco tucked in his lower lip. Consent, Braddock repeated. He said it like it was a joke, a funny little word that didn't apply here. You hear that, folks? He looked around the diner. This gentleman does not consent. A couple of the older patrons shifted in their seats. One man stared at his plate. A woman clutched her napkin. Nobody spoke. Braddock looked back at Isaiah. That grin again, wide and sharp and empty. Let me explain something to you, friend. You're sitting in my jurisdiction, eating in my town, breathing my air. And when I say I need to check your vehicle, that's not a request. That's not a negotiation. He leaned down, his face inches from Isaiah's. That's me being polite. Outside, through the window, Isaiah could see Hutton circling the Tahoe. trying the door handles, cupping his hands against the tinted glass to peer inside. In the back seat sat Isaiah's leather briefcase, the one holding his appointment letter, his new badge, and his FBI commendation certificates. Hutton pulled on the driver's door. Locked. He walked back inside. "Truck's locked, Sheriff. Want me to call for a Slim Jim?" Braddock kept his eyes on Isaiah. "Give me your keys." Isaiah looked at him. Steady, unwavering. "No." The words sat in the air between them like a lit match. Braddock straightened up, rolled his neck, adjusted his belt. "Wrong answer." Braddock moved fast for a man his size. He grabbed Isaiah by the back of his polo shirt and hauled him out of the booth. Isaiah's knee cracked against the table leg. His coffee mug tipped over and sent a brown river across the tabletop, dripping onto the checkered floor. "Hands behind your back, now!" Isaiah didn't resist. He knew what resistance meant in a room like this, with a man like this. It meant a baton across the ribs. It meant, "He reached for my weapon," written in a report that nobody would ever question. He put his hands behind his back. The handcuffs bit into his wrists. Cold steel, too tight. Braddock cranked them one extra click, the kind of click that wasn't procedure. It was punctuation. Terrence shot to his feet. "What are you doing? He didn't do anything." Hutton was on him before he finished the sentence. He grabbed Terrence by the shoulder, spun him around, and slammed him chest first into the booth divider. The wood cracked. Terrence's glasses flew off and skidded across the floor. "Resisting arrest," Hutton said, like he was reading a grocery list. "I wasn't—" "Shut up." Hutton cuffed him, shoved him to the floor. Terrence's cheekbone hit the tile with a sound that made the woman in booth 3 cover her mouth. Now both men were down, face against the cold, sticky floor. The smell of pine sol and maple syrup and something metallic, fear probably, thick in their nostrils. Isaiah turned his head. From his angle, the world was sideways. He could see chair legs, muddy boot prints, a piece of shattered plate near Terrence's head. And beyond that, 12 pairs of shoes belonging to 12 people who were watching and doing absolutely nothing. Braddock stood over them, hands on his hips, chest out. He looked around the diner the way a preacher looks at his congregation. "This," he said, loud enough for every corner of the room, "is what happens when people come into a town and don't understand how things work." He paced around the two cuffed men, slow circles, his boots clicking against the tile in a rhythm that felt deliberate, theatrical. "You come in here, my county, my jurisdiction, and you think you can just sit down and tell me no?" He laughed, dry and hollow. "That's not how this works." A child in the far booth started crying, soft at first, then louder. The mother gathered the boy into her lap and pressed his face against her shoulder. She didn't look up. She didn't want eye contact with Braddock. Nobody did. But someone was looking. Behind the pastry display, Hannah Moore had her phone out. She'd picked it up the moment Braddock grabbed Isaiah's shirt. Her hands were shaking so badly the frame wobbled, but the camera was recording. She angled it between the glass cake stands, just enough to capture Braddock's face, the two men on the floor, and the silence of every witness in the room. And there was one more pair of eyes. Deputy Sam Atkins had arrived separately. He stood near the front door, quiet, hands at his sides. His face was blank, but his jaw was tight. He'd seen Braddock do this before. Different faces, same script, same result. But today, something was different. Atkins looked down at the body cam clipped to his chest. The small red light blinked steadily. Recording. He didn't touch it. He didn't turn it off. He just stood there and let it run. Outside, Hutton went back to the Tahoe. He had a Slim Jim now, pulled from the cruiser's trunk. He popped the driver's door in under 30 seconds. The lock gave with a dull thunk. He tore through the vehicle like a man searching for buried treasure. Suitcases dragged out and thrown on the gravel. A garment bag, Isaiah's dress uniform from Monday's ceremony, tossed onto the hood. Clothes spilling out. A toiletry bag unzipped and dumped. Then the briefcase. Hutton pulled the leather briefcase from the back seat. It was heavy, locked with a combination. He didn't try the combination. He pried it open with his knife. The leather tore with a ripping sound that carried through the parking lot. Inside, documents, a thick folder, an FBI commendation letter, a signed appointment certificate from the mayor's office, and at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, a badge. A chief's badge. Hutton didn't read any of it. He tossed the briefcase on the ground next to the suitcases and walked back inside. Nothing obvious in the truck, Sheriff. Some paperwork. Clothes. Braddock nodded. He wasn't really listening. He was too busy enjoying himself. He crouched down next to Isaiah, one knee on the floor, close enough that Isaiah could hear the leather of his belt creak. "You know what I think?" Braddock said, low, almost a whisper. "I think you came here to cause problems. I think you and your buddy here are exactly the type of trouble this town doesn't need." Isaiah said nothing. His cheek was pressed against the tile. He could feel the cold seeping through his skin into his jaw. He could see a crack in the floor running from his eye line to the base of the counter. A tiny ant walked along it, unbothered by the chaos above. "Nothing to say now, huh?" Braddock stood back up. "Funny how that works." He walked to the counter, picked up Gloria's phone and set it back on the hook. Gloria had been reaching for it. He wagged his finger at her. "Don't!" Gloria's hand froze. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but the look in Braddock's eyes shut her down. She stepped back. Her hands trembled against her apron. But Gloria Stevens had owned that diner for 35 years. She'd survived a divorce, a flood, and a recession. She wasn't the type to be shut down for long. She walked to the kitchen, picked up the wall-mounted phone next to the deep fryer, the one Braddock didn't know about, and she dialed the mayor's office. "Carolyn, it's Gloria. You need to get down to the diner, right now. Something's happening, and it's bad." Back in the dining room, Braddock grabbed his radio from his shoulder. He pressed the button and spoke clearly into the mic. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Braddock. I've got 2 suspects in custody at Gloria's Griddle. Possible narcotics. Requesting transport." Gloria heard the radio call from the kitchen doorway. Her stomach dropped. She whispered to Hannah, who was still recording behind the display case. "There are no drugs. He's making it all up." Hannah nodded. She didn't stop recording. Isaiah lay on that floor and listened to every word. The fabricated radio call, the narcotics claim, the request for transport. He cataloged each violation in his mind the way he'd been trained to. False arrest, illegal search, filing a false report, deprivation of rights under color of law. He'd spent 15 years putting people in prison for exactly this. Terrence lay beside him. His lip was swelling where it had hit the table. A thin line of blood ran from his nostril to the tile. His glasses were somewhere under booth 6, probably crushed. "You okay?" Isaiah whispered. "No," Terrence whispered back. "But I trust you." Isaiah closed his eyes for 1 second. Just one. And in that second, he made a decision. He would not reveal who he was. Not yet. He wanted Braddock to finish. He wanted every lie, every violation, every abuse of power to stack up so high that when the truth came out, there would be nowhere to hide. Braddock looked at his watch. The transport van would be here in 15 minutes. He grinned at Hutton. "Book 'em both. Resisting, obstruction, possession pending search results." Hutton pulled out a clipboard, started writing. Braddock looked down at Isaiah one last time. "Should have kept driving, friend." At that exact moment, Mayor Carolyn Whitfield's phone rang. Not Gloria's call. This time it was dispatch. 2 out-of-town suspects detained at the diner. Possible narcotics. The mayor asked one question. "What are their names?" Dispatch paused. We don't have names yet, ma'am. Sheriff hasn't called them in." Whitfield hung up. Her hands went cold. She knew Isaiah Davis was arriving this weekend. She knew he was staying at the Pine View Motel. She knew he'd mentioned wanting to try the local diner. She grabbed her coat and her car keys. "Get me the county attorney," she said to her assistant. "Now!" A black town car pulled into the gravel lot of Gloria's Griddle at 8:47 a.m. The engine was still running when Mayor Carolyn Whitfield stepped out. She didn't walk. She moved with the kind of speed that comes from knowing something terrible is already happening and you might be too late to stop it. Behind her, the town manager, Gerald Foster. And behind him, County Attorney Patricia Caldwell, already pulling a legal pad from her bag. 3 car doors slammed in rapid succession. The sound cut through the quiet parking lot like gunshots. Whitfield saw the mess before she reached the door. Isaiah's rental Tahoe, doors open, suitcases on the gravel, clothes scattered, the leather briefcase split open on the ground. The garment bag draped over the hood, the dress uniform inside visible through the plastic. Navy blue, gold buttons, chief's insignia on the shoulder. She stopped, stared at that uniform, her jaw locked. Then she pushed through the diner door. The bell chimed. Cheerful. Absurd. The scene inside hit her like a wall. 2 black men face down on the tile floor, hands cuffed behind their backs. A thin streak of blood near one man's face. Shattered plates. Spilled coffee. A diner full of people frozen in their booths like mannequins in a department store window. And Earl Braddock, standing in the middle of it all, thumbs hooked in his belt, grinning at Deputy Hutton like they'd just won a poker hand. Whitfield's eyes went to the floor, to the man closest to the window. Navy polo, clean sneakers, calm face pressed against the tile. She recognized him instantly. The blood drained from her face. Then it rushed back, hot and furious. "Sheriff Braddock!" Her voice cut through the diner like a blade through paper. Every head turned. "Take those handcuffs off, right now!" Braddock looked at her, annoyed, the way a man looks at a fly buzzing near his food. "Mayor, with all due respect, this is a law enforcement matter. I've got 2 suspects. Take them off." "Ma'am, I don't think you understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." Whitfield stepped closer. Her heels clicked on the tile. She stopped 2 feet from Braddock, and when she spoke again, her voice carried to every corner of the room. "That man on the floor, the one you handcuffed, humiliated, and pinned down like a criminal, is Isaiah Davis. He is the new chief of police of Hadley County. He was appointed by my office. He starts Monday morning. And you just arrested him for ordering pancakes." Silence. Not the uncomfortable silence from before. This was something else. This was the silence of a room watching a man's world collapse in real time. Braddock's grin melted. It didn't fade. It melted, like wax sliding off a candle. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. Hutton, standing near the door, went white. The clipboard in his hand, the one he'd been using to write up the charges, slipped from his fingers and clattered on the floor. Whitfield turned to Deputy Atkins. "Deputy, uncuff both of these men, now!" Atkins moved immediately. No hesitation. He knelt beside Isaiah first. The handcuffs clicked open. Then Terrence. The second pair of cuffs hit the tile with a metallic ring that echoed through the room. Isaiah stood up slowly. He rolled his shoulders, rubbed his wrists where the steel had bitten into his skin, red marks already forming, deep enough to bruise. He straightened his polo shirt, brushed the floor dust from his jeans. Then he looked at Braddock, not with anger, not with triumph, with something worse, recognition. The look of a man who had seen exactly what he came to see. "You told me this was your town," Isaiah said. Quiet. Steady, every word placed with surgical precision. "As of Monday, I'm responsible for every badge in this county, including yours." Braddock's mouth moved again. Now hold on. I didn't know. There's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Sheriff." Isaiah's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I heard every word you said. So did everyone in this room." Terrence got to his feet beside him. He touched his swollen lip, looked at the blood on his fingertips. Then he looked at Isaiah and shook his head with a small, disbelieving laugh. Man, you could have told him. Isaiah didn't take his eyes off Braddock. Didn't need to. His behavior told me everything I needed to know. Braddock stood there. In the middle of the diner he'd walked into 20 minutes ago like he owned it. His badge still on his chest, his gun still on his hip. But everything that those things represented, the power, the authority, the 18 years of untouchable control, was evaporating like steam off a coffee mug. Gloria stepped out from behind the counter. She looked at Isaiah, then at the mayor, then at Braddock. She reached over and turned off the gospel music on the kitchen radio. The diner didn't need a soundtrack for this. Patricia Caldwell, the county attorney, stepped forward with her legal pad. She didn't introduce herself. She looked directly at Braddock and said 5 words. "Sheriff, we need to talk." Braddock's hand moved instinctively to his badge, like a man checking to make sure his wallet is still there. It was, but not for long. Braddock tried to shake Isaiah's hand. He actually extended his palm, the same hand that had yanked Isaiah out of a booth by his collar 10 minutes ago, and offered it like they were meeting at a barbecue. Isaiah looked at the hand, then looked at Braddock's face. He didn't move. The hand hung in the air for 3 seconds. Then it dropped. "Listen," Braddock started. His voice had changed. The gravel was gone. The authority was gone. What was left sounded thin and hollow, like a man talking through a cracked window. This was standard procedure. I had a report. I was just doing my job. Your job. Patricia Caldwell repeated the words like she was reading them off an autopsy report. She stepped forward, legal pad open, pen clicking. Your job involved fabricating a radio call about narcotics with 0 evidence. Your job involved an illegal search of a vehicle without a warrant or consent. Your job involved physically assaulting and handcuffing 2 men who committed no crime. She paused, let the list settle in the air like smoke. That's not a job, Sheriff. That's a felony. Braddock's face twitched. His eyes darted to the diner patrons, looking for an ally, a sympathetic face, anyone. He found nothing. The firemen at the counter stared at their plates. Old Mr. Dawson folded his newspaper and wouldn't look up. The woman with the child had already left. I can explain." "You'll have that opportunity," Caldwell said. "But not here, and not today." Mayor Whitfield stepped beside the county attorney. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from a rage she was barely containing. "Earl, effective immediately, you are placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. I need your badge, your service weapon, and your vehicle keys." Braddock blinked. 18 years. 18 years he'd worn that badge, through 3 elections, through budget cuts and storms and 2 governors. No one had ever asked him to take it off. "Carolyn, come on, you can't be serious." "Badge, weapon, keys, now." His fingers moved to his chest, slow, reluctant, like he was peeling off his own skin. The badge unclipped with a small metallic snap. He held it in his palm for a moment, staring at it, then set it on the counter next to the coffee pot. The gun came next. He unholstered it with the mechanical routine of a man who'd done it 10,000 times, placed it on the counter beside the badge. The weight of it made the formica creak. Then the keys. He pulled them from his pocket and set them down without a word. Whitfield turned to Hutton. "Deputy Hutton, you are also suspended effective immediately. Same terms, badge and weapon." Hutton's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Braddock for guidance, the way he always had, but Braddock was staring at the floor. Hutton fumbled with his badge. It took him 3 tries to unclip it. Then Atkins stepped forward. He unclipped the body cam from his chest and held it out to the county attorney. "Ma'am, my camera has been recording since I arrived. Everything, audio and video." Caldwell took the camera like it was made of glass. "Thank you, Deputy." Gloria walked over from the kitchen doorway. Her eyes were red, but her voice was iron. "I saw the whole thing, Mayor. start to finish. I'll swear to every word under oath. Hannah appeared from behind the pastry display, phone in hand, still shaking. I have video too. I started recording when he grabbed Mr. Davis. Caldwell secured both, the body cam footage and Hannah's phone video. 2 angles, 2 recordings, 2 pieces of evidence that Braddock could never talk his way out of. Whitfield looked at Atkins. Deputy, please escort the former sheriff to his vehicle. He can arrange a ride home. Former sheriff. She said it deliberately. Atkins nodded. Braddock walked toward the door. His boots, the same boots that had clicked so loudly on the tile 20 minutes ago, now barely made a sound. Atkins held the door open for him. Not out of respect, out of procedure. The bell chimed as Braddock stepped outside. Cheerful, absurd, same as before. The diner watched him through the windows. Nobody waved. Nobody called out. 18 years and the man walked out to silence. Isaiah turned to Gloria. Thank you for making that call. Gloria wiped her eyes with her apron. Should have done more. Isaiah shook his head. You did enough. Terrence picked up his cracked glasses from under booth 6. One lens was missing. He put them on anyway, looked at the empty plates on their table, and let out a long breath. So, can we finish our pancakes? Or is there more drama coming? Gloria almost laughed. Almost. Honey, breakfast is on the house. Today and every day you walk through that door. Monday morning arrived like a verdict. The Hadley County Municipal Building had never seen this many cameras. Local news vans lined the street. 2 Atlanta stations sent crews. A national cable network had a correspondent standing on the courthouse steps doing a live shot at 7 a.m. The press conference was scheduled for 9. By 8:30, every seat in the council chamber was taken. Reporters, residents, county employees. A row of Hadley County deputies sat in the back. Uniforms pressed, faces unreadable. They'd heard rumors all weekend. Now they were about to meet the man those rumors were about. Mayor Whitfield stepped to the podium first. She didn't waste time. 2 days ago, a man came to our town to serve this community. Before he could even start, he was assaulted, humiliated, and falsely arrested by the very department he was hired to lead. That stops today. She turned to her right. Isaiah Davis walked to the podium in full dress uniform. Navy blue, gold buttons, chief's insignia on both shoulders. The same uniform that had been thrown on the hood of his rental car like a piece of trash. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He stood there and let the cameras click. My name is Isaiah Davis. I'm your new chief of police, and I'm here to do a job. The room erupted, questions flying from every direction. Isaiah raised one hand. The room went quiet. I'll take questions later. Right now, I want to say one thing. What happened to me on Saturday happens to people who don't have a badge waiting for them on Monday. That's the problem. And that's what we're going to fix. By Tuesday, Hannah Moore's phone video had 4 million views. The footage was shaky, the audio was muffled in places, but the images were undeniable. 2 black men on the floor, a sheriff standing over them. The words, "Animals don't eat where people sit," captured clearly enough to make the blood run cold. The internet did what the internet does. The video spread from local Facebook groups to Twitter to national news feeds in under 12 hours. Hashtags multiplied. Opinion pieces followed. Pundits debated. But the video spoke for itself. By Wednesday, the Georgia Attorney General's office announced a formal civil rights investigation into Sheriff Earl Braddock and the Hadley County Sheriff's Department. Investigator Angela Brooks was assigned to lead it. 43 years old, former federal prosecutor, the kind of woman who read depositions the way other people read novels, looking for the lie between the lines. Brooks didn't start with the diner, she started with the files. 18 years of records from Braddock's department, incident reports, complaint logs, internal review summaries. She requested everything. The county handed it over within 48 hours. Mayor Whitfield made sure of that. What Brooks found was worse than anyone expected. 14 prior incidents of racial profiling. 14. Exposed one by one like tumors under a scan. Traffic stops where the stated reason was suspicious behavior, but the dash cam showed a black driver doing nothing wrong. A search of a Latino family's minivan during a church picnic. Nothing found, no report filed. A black teenager held in a patrol car for 2 hours because he matched a description that was never documented. 3 of those 14 incidents involved physical force. One man had his arm dislocated during a routine pat-down. He filed a complaint. Braddock reviewed it himself. Dismissed. Every single case. Buried. Reviewed internally. Closed without action. The same signature at the bottom of every dismissal form. Earl J. Braddock. Former victims came forward, one by one, then in groups. People who had stayed silent for years, afraid of retaliation, afraid of the badge, afraid of a system that had shown them over and over that their word meant nothing against a sheriff's. Now they had a reason to speak, and a microphone pointed in their direction. Deputy Sam Atkins cooperated fully with the investigation. He sat for 9 hours of recorded testimony. He described a culture of intimidation within the department, unwritten rules that every deputy understood. Stop unfamiliar vehicles driven by people of color near the county line. Find a reason, any reason. If you couldn't find one, make one up. We all knew, Atkins said during his deposition. Some of us just didn't have the guts to say it. The grand jury convened in November. The indictment was 12 pages long. 4 counts of civil rights violations under color of law. Federal charges carrying up to 10 years each. 2 counts of false imprisonment. 1 count of filing a false police report. The fabricated narcotics call from the diner. 1 count of official misconduct. Deputy Kyle Hutton was indicted separately. Aiding an illegal search, obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence. His body cam footage from the diner had been accidentally deleted. The forensic team recovered it anyway. The trial lasted 11 days. The prosecution played Atkins' body cam footage on day 1. Every second, every word. The jury watched Braddock crouch beside Isaiah on the floor and whisper, "Should have kept driving, friend." They watched Hutton slam Terrence into the booth divider. They heard the child crying in the background. Then they played Hannah's phone video. Different angle, same horror. Braddock's attorney attempted a good-faith defense. His client believed the men were genuine suspects. The report about the suspicious vehicle was real. The arrest was within standard operating procedure. Brooks dismantled it in closing arguments. She displayed the 14 prior incidents on a screen, one by one. Names, dates, dismissed complaints. She read the victims' statements aloud. She ended with Braddock's own words from the diner, projected in white text on a black background. "I decide who's human." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty. Every count. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. 8 years federal prison. Loss of all law enforcement certifications. Lifetime ban from public service. Hutton received 2 years for his role, plus 3 years of supervised probation. Within 6 months of taking office, Isaiah restructured the entire department. Mandatory body cam compliance. No exceptions, no malfunctions, no excuses. Independent Civilian Oversight Board. Monthly community town halls. De-escalation training required for every officer every quarter. Deputy Sam Atkins was promoted to sergeant. The man who kept his camera running became the symbol of what accountability looks like when it starts from the inside. Excessive force complaints in Hadley County dropped to 0 within a year. Isaiah was invited to speak at a national policing reform conference in Washington. He told the diner story, not as a personal grievance, as a case study. as proof that one honest deputy, one waitress with a phone, and one diner owner with a second phone line can bring down 18 years of unchecked power. 6 months later, Isaiah Davis walked into Gloria's Griddle on a Saturday morning. Same door, same bell, same smell of bacon grease baked into the walls. The checkered floor had been retiled. Gloria said the old ones had bad memories, but everything else was the same. The red vinyl booths, the coffee pot that never stopped brewing, the gospel music humming low from the kitchen radio. Terrence was already sitting in the booth by the window, their booth. He had new glasses, a fresh haircut, and the same grin he'd had since sophomore year at Howard. "You're late," Terrence said. "I'm the chief. I'm not late. Everyone else is early." "That doesn't even make sense." "Doesn't have to. I outrank you." Hannah brought over 2 mugs and the coffee pot without being asked. She poured. The steam curled up between them the same way it had that first morning, before the handcuffs, before the blood, before everything changed. "Short stack and bacon?" she asked. "×2, Terrence said. She smiled and disappeared into the kitchen. Isaiah looked around the diner. The Saturday crowd was filing in. Farmers in muddy boots, a young couple with a baby in a carrier, 2 of his deputies, out of uniform, off duty, sitting at the counter eating eggs. They nodded at him. He nodded back. On the wall beside the register, Gloria had framed a newspaper clipping from the Hadley County Gazette. The headline read, "New Chief Brings New Day to Hadley." Below it, a smaller frame held a handwritten note on diner stationery. Isaiah had seen it before, but he read it again anyway. "In this diner, everybody eats. Everybody belongs. No exceptions. Gloria Stevens." Gloria herself was behind the counter, same as always. Silver hair, stained apron, pen behind her ear. She caught Isaiah looking at the frames and pointed her spatula at him. "Don't get emotional on me, Chief. Your pancakes are getting cold." Isaiah smiled, something he did more often these days. Terrence leaned back in the booth. He was quiet for a moment, rare for him. Then he said, "I started a new unit in my curriculum, civil rights and policing. We use real case studies. Yours is the first one." Isaiah raised an eyebrow. "You teaching kids about me getting thrown on a diner floor?" "I'm teaching kids about what happens when someone stays calm when the whole world is telling them to break. That's not a small thing, Zay." Isaiah looked out the window. Main Street was waking up. A woman was unlocking the flower shop across the road. A kid on a bicycle rode past with a dog running beside him. The courthouse clock tower showed 8:15 against a clean blue sky. It wasn't perfect. He knew that. The trust between the department and the community was still fragile. Some residents still flinched when they saw a patrol car. Some deputies still resisted the new protocols behind closed doors. Reform wasn't a light switch. It was a slow, grinding wheel that had to be pushed every single day. But it was moving. The town halls were drawing 40, 50 people a month now. Residents who'd never spoken to a police officer in their lives were showing up, asking questions, shaking hands. The oversight board had already reviewed 3 complaints, all handled transparently, all resolved within 30 days. And Sergeant Sam Atkins, the deputy who kept his camera running when it mattered most, was training the next class of recruits, teaching them that the badge was a responsibility, not a crown. Isaiah picked up his coffee, took a long sip, set it down. "You know what I keep thinking about?" he said. "What?" "That morning, when he was standing over us, and he said, 'I decide who's human.' I keep thinking, how many times did he say that to someone who didn't have a mayor coming through the door?" Terrence didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew. So here's my question for you, and I mean this one. If you were sitting in that diner, watching a man get thrown on the floor for eating breakfast, what would you do? Would you stand up? Would you record? Would you call someone? Or would you just stare at your plate and wait for it to be over? Be honest. Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this story hit you, if it made you think, made you angry, made you feel something real, smash that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Subscribe and hit the bell because we've got more stories coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. Because here's the truth. Justice doesn't happen by accident. It happens because somebody, a waitress, a deputy, a diner owner, maybe even you, refused to stay silent.
18 years of power gone in one morning, not because of a federal investigation, because a waitress hid records and a deputy didn't turn off his camera. But here's what stays with me. Isaiah had a badge waiting for him on Monday. That's why this became national news. That's why the mayor came through that door. But what about the 14 people before him? The man whose arm got dislocated, and the teenager held for 2 hours for matching the description that never existed. Nobody came through the door for them. Isaiah said it best. What happens to me happens to people who don't have badge waiting for them on Monday. And that's not just a quote. That's the difference between a story that gets told and one that gets buried. So here's what I want you to sit with tonight. When 12 people watched and no one moved, were they bad people or were they just scared? And if fear is enough to make good people do nothing, then how many times has silence done more damage than the act itself? What would you have done? Be honest. Drop your answer in the comments. I read everyone. If this story hit you, like, share, and subscribe. Tap the bell. Next week's story. Someone picked the wrong person to mess with, and they had no idea. Justice doesn't happen by accident. It happens because somebody refused to stay silent.